Yellowstone National Park is a famous park in the United States of America. It attracts many tourists as well as scientists who have studied the animals and the plants that are found there. In Lesson 1, you learned that in ecosystems of different kinds, there are a number of different trophic levels. The word trophic is related to nutrition or feeding. So we have the first feeding level, the primary producers. These are also called autotrophs because they are self-feeders. The word auto means by itself. Here we see just some of the primary producers found in Yellowstone National Park. The autotrophs depend on the sun for their energy. Perhaps 1 to 2% of the sun's energy is absorbed by plants, and some of this, between 40 and 85%, then becomes stored energy available for the heterotrophs. The consumers, the detritivores and the decomposers, are all called heterotrophs because they feed on others or organisms that are different. Heterotrophs depend on autotrophs for their energy. So when we are looking at all of the plants in an ecosystem, we are getting an idea of how much of the sun's energy has been stored. The more plant matter there is, the more energy stored. How much energy is stored in different types of food can be measured. For example, when we look at food labels on the outside packaging of the food we buy, you can see how much energy we will get into our bodies when we eat or drink that food. The amount of energy in the food can be measured either in kilojoules or calories. Let's give the amount of energy stored in the autotrophs, the plants, a value of 100%. You might ask, well, how much energy from the primary producers is passed on to the primary consumers, the herbivores? The answer is that it varies. It can be as high as 18%, but generally it's around 10%. In a steady state ecosystem, that is, in an ecosystem that doesn't change very much over many years, the amount of energy stored in the first order consumers remains at that level. That is, around 10% of the primary producers. If there are too many first order or primary consumers, the consumers could run out of food and die. This would be an unstable ecosystem. Farmers could have an unstable agricultural ecosystem if there were too many cattle in a grass paddock. So for an ecosystem that has, say, 100 gigajoules stored in its plants, there is probably only around 10 gigajoules stored in the insects, birds, mammals, and other herbivores that eat the plants. Where has the remaining 90% of the energy gone? It is lost in a number of ways. Firstly, some of the food passes through as waste, as feces. Secondly, some is given out as heat energy. The amount of heat is more for animals that keep a constant temperature, such as birds and mammals, as you might expect. Some of the energy is used to enable them to move or fly. In the same way, when the second order consumers, or the carnivores, eat the herbivores, only around 1/10 or 10% of the energy is stored in the secondary consumers. The same applies to the third order consumers or tertiary consumers. 1/10 or less of the energy is stored in the next trophic level. The horizontal graph of the energy is drawn, as you can see here. It has the shape of a pyramid. It is called the energy pyramid of an ecosystem. The trophic levels of an ecosystem can also be represented by the mass of the organisms that make up the ecosystem, such as the one studied in a Florida water spring in the United States. It's what's called the biomass of the trophic levels. It is also shaped as a pyramid. To measure biomass, samples of each trophic level are taken, dried so that the water is removed, and then weighed. You'll notice that an energy pyramid and a biomass pyramid have much the same shape. The shape of these pyramids helps to explain why there is a small number of apex predators in most ecosystems. There is simply not enough energy flowing through the ecosystems to keep them alive. The energy pyramid and knowledge of food webs of an ecosystem help to explain why changes in a number of apex predators in an ecosystem can bring about large and unexpected changes in the whole ecosystem. For example, the Yellowstone National Park once supported a very large variety of animals and plants, including wolves. However, by the year 1923, most of the wolves, if not all, had been killed. Farmers found they attacked their sheep and cattle. Without this predator, there was an increase in the number of elks that the wolves used to hunt for their food. A greater number of elks ate more of the shoots of the aspen tree and willow plants that grew alongside the streams that flowed through the park, leaving the ground bare. The bare ground and fewer willow branches resulted in more water rushing through the streams, washing away the dams the beavers needed so they could have still water to build their shelters. So the beavers disappeared from the ecosystem. Fish were lost from the streams. Other changes included an increase in the number of coyotes, followed by a decrease in the number of pronghorn antelope. The loss of aspen, willow, and cottonwood vegetation eaten by the elks, the reduction of the fish, particularly the cutthroat trout, both led to reduced bird life. It was then judged as a mistake to have killed all of the wolves. So in 1995, park authorities reintroduced wolves from Canada. As a result, the number of elks decreased. The aspen trees and willows recovered, and parts of the park are now returning to how they were decades ago. There was more space for birds to nest and feed. The regrowth of the vegetation near the streams resulted in a slowing of the water and the conditions necessary for the beavers and the fish to return. So removing apex predators can have very large and unexpected results on entire ecosystems. We humans are also part of a food pyramid. We are omnivores, so we act as both primary and secondary consumers. To a large degree, we live in our own agricultural ecosystem in which we grow our own plants, wheat, rice, oats, potato, and corn on farms. And we farm our own animals, chicken, sheep, beef, pigs, and to some extent we farm fish. So as apex consumers, what we choose to eat, whether it is meat or plants, makes a big difference to the size and the shape of the pyramid. If we ate half as much meat, for example, the amount of energy that needed to come from plants would be many times less. This would have an effect on natural ecosystems. If Australians and people in countries to which we export our lamb and beef ate less meat, farmers would not have to clear as much native forest or native grassland to provide food for the animals. The red on the map shows how much forest in Australia has been changed since European settlement, natural ecosystems being absorbed into agricultural ecosystems, especially for humans. In many other countries, it is a similar story. Natural ecosystems are being replaced by agricultural ecosystems. On the island of Borneo in Indonesia, plantations are replacing natural jungle. In the countries of South America, there is a similar story of natural ecosystems being replaced by agricultural ecosystems. So we as humans can learn a lot from understanding the feeding relationships between living things, knowing how energy makes its way through plants and animals, understanding the importance of apex predators, and realizing that what we choose to eat has an impact on our natural ecosystems.